Tariffs. I'm just going to talk off the cuff about what's been going on with the trade war and how that affects a local game store. I don't have any, thoughts prepared or anything like that. I didn't do any research specific to the economics of tariffs, and I'm not really going to discuss the good, the bad, or the why, the how, the whatever of tariffs. We're not really a political or economic channel. We're just a channel that talks about stuff that goes on that affects our store. So there's no reason to discuss any of that. It's just about the specifics of how this thing is affecting our store. So we got our first sort of updates from external sources on how the tariffs affect us. One was from eBay, and the other was from one distributor. And I'm sure other distributors will email us at some point and let us know what the effects of the tariffs are. But so far it was just the one, and it's my favorite one, the one that I use the most. And they are pretty communicative, and that's one of the reasons I like them. And they're very flexible in how they do things, and they work really well with my store. Anyway, the point is that I'll get with the eBay one first because it's simpler. Their email was that if a sale is under $800, they seem to suggest that there wouldn't be any tariffs on it. I don't know if that's really how the tariffs work. If I sell stuff to the United States, and I'm not really sure. And so the tariffs, in any case, are on again, off again, on again, off again. But from a Canadian perspective, the only tariffs that affect me personally are tariffs that my government, the Canadian government, has placed. Because when goods come in, that's when the tariffs are charged, and therefore I'm the one that's going to pay it. On the opposite side, the U.S. stores, if goods come in from Canada into the United States, they're the ones that would be paying tariffs. So if I ship something to the United States, and apparently if it's over $800, then the person who receives it will have to pay tariffs. I won't have to pay the tariffs. It's the person who receives it. So, I mean, you yourself may have bought something online at some point in time and went to go pick it up at the mail store or whatever, at your local post office, and before they give it to you, they charge you duties. That's essentially the same thing, right? So if I ship something to the United States and there's 25% duties on it, and then the person to get it has to pay an extra 25%, the reason they're shopping on eBay and the reason they bought that thing is because they probably price compared it somewhere else and it was cheaper. But is it still cheaper with the extra 25%? And no one likes having, first of all, to go to the post office and not just getting it directly to their house. And no one likes being charged duties because it's an unexpected cost at the end of the day. So what eBay has said that they will do is they will help protect sellers from negative feedback induced because of tariffs. So that's very good. It's a good thing that eBay did that. They rarely go out of their way to prevent negative feedback to sellers because they want it to be a buyer's marketplace. And I understand the reasons for that. Maybe because I worked for eBay and drank the Kool-Aid. I don't know. I don't really care about that. The point is, this is specifically really good help because it did worry me that if I'm going to be selling stuff, should I just take it all down until tariffs go away? Because I would get negative feedback, and the eBay account would get shut down eventually anyway because of the amount of negative feedback you would get, or sell only in Canada, something like that. So this is very helpful, and eBay was on top of it. Again, I don't know about the $800 or under not having tariffs. I don't know. And also, it seems like from the U.S. side, a lot of the tariffs are suspended until April now. And again, they may come back into effect and then go back into suspension. I don't know. But that isn't really my main concern because I'm not the one that pays those tariffs. So it's my government's tariffs that were retaliatory tariffs, and they are keeping them on despite the fact that this is the second time that the tariffs against them have been suspended. Because I'm guessing because they think that it'll just happen again, and they want to make some point. I don't know. That's not really my concern. I don't have any control over that. But the tariffs on our side are on. So the email that I got from my distributor was a list of Tarkir products that every store by now has pre-ordered Tarkir products, and they've pre-ordered Final Fantasy products, but the email wasn't referencing Final Fantasy in this. It was just a list of what the new prices were given the tariffs, if they're still in effect, when they take payment of the Tarkir products, which is usually, a few days to a week before it ships to you, right? So the Play boxes have tariffs on them. I think the Commander boxes have tariffs on them. So, and I think maybe the bundles as well, from what I remember. Anyway, so 1 to 3 of the products have an increased price because of tariffs, and I believe it's around the 25%. I didn't calculate it, but the collector booster boxes are the same price. So, what's happening with that? My immediate suspicion, and I still believe this, is that the collector boxes, most of Magic the Gathering product is printed in Belgium and then shipped to North America. Some of it's printed in the United States, very small amount. Some of it's printed in Japan, a larger, small amount. But the majority of it is in Carte Monde in Belgium. So there aren't tariffs being raised against Belgium by either Canada or the United States. There may already just be tariffs in general, because unless you have free trade deals, there's tariffs. So as far as I know, neither of us have free trade with Belgium. Possibly Canada does. Canada, for many decades, has been pro-free trade and has probably the most free trade agreements with the most countries in the world, as far as I know. So it's possible that there are no tariffs, but they don't. Usually, I guess they just kind of include it in the price in distribution and most other things that get shipped into Canada. So you don't necessarily ever see the tariffs unless you're, an importer, exporter, or a distributor or something like that. But what I think is that because collector booster boxes have a much smaller print run and a much smaller, size than play boxes, and the play boxes are a huge print run that service around the world, right? So there's a lot to get done. So they probably get printed first, and it's possible Tarkir boxes have been printing for 6 months. I don't know exactly how it works. There's 4 sets of Magic, and so there's 4 to 6 sets of Magic. Anyway, the point is they probably carve up 2 months of the year for each set to be printed, right? And so Tarkir is 2 to 4 months that it was probably printed, and the play boxes would have started at the very beginning because they need the most of those, and the collector boxes less so. But my point is that they go to a warehouse, from what I understand, in Texas, the play boxes, and probably the bundles, and probably the Commander deck sets, because those things are. There's more of those. And then also, the blister display packs that go into Walmarts, Targets, and that kind of stuff. But the collector boosters could very well be shipped direct to Canada to the distributors, because it might be simpler that way than having them sent out from Texas, because there's not as many of them, and it's not as logistically insane to get that stuff around, because they have a smaller footprint and less weight. So that's my best guess as to why the collector booster boxes don't have tariffs on them. And because, I don't think Magic says made in the USA. I think the older boxes did, but they aren't. The actual physical thing is made in Belgium, but and I'm pretty sure that there isn't any end run around saying, made in USA because you packaged it in the USA. All right, some people use that as a loophole, I think, maybe. I don't know. But as far as I know, it's packaged in Belgium as well, so there isn't that kind of thing. So what I'm saying is I think that most of the product goes to warehouses in the United States to service North America and possibly South America as well. But the collector boosters, because of their small footprint and because of their smaller print size or whatever, they probably just go directly to whatever country that they're going to, at least in Canada's. It could, and I doubt this is the case, that the distributors have not raised the price on the collector boxes, either A, because they've already got them in hand, and therefore they are not they came in before the tariffs went on, and maybe Wizard of the Coast sped up that and because it was easier. Maybe that's a possibility, or maybe they're eating the cost. That's highly unlikely that they're eating the cost on that. So a store now has I guess a 20% increase if you count all of the product together instead of a 25% increase, which will then have to pass on to the customer. And will customers pay that? Luckily, we're in a bull market, so maybe they will. But everyone suddenly in Canada has to pay more for Magic the Gathering. In the United States, you don't have to because, even if the tariffs weren't suspended by the U.S. government, the product is still not coming from Canada and therefore isn't subject to those tariffs. There have already been existing tariffs from Belgium. I don't know. I've never looked into this. But for Canadians, the price is going to get very expensive. And then, you've got large, friendly local game stores that order a lot of product. And yeah, they got lots of money. But then suddenly there's an extra 20-25% on the price of what they've got to pay to bring in the Tarkir Dragonstorm. And then Final Fantasy is hugely expensive. And then 25% of that is even more, right? Percentage based is terrible, right? Especially when the prices are not the same. Like Final Fantasy is not quite twice the price of Tarkir, but it's approaching that. So that is going to hurt a lot if these tariffs stay on into June. But with Tarkir, like I said, the larger game stores, they may have access to more capital, but now this is sucking up the capital that they have plans for that capital. So from what I understand, some of them, with their pre-orders, that's another thing, is, stores, I'll get to the pre-order thing after this. So then you have medium stores who have, less capital, but they're doing okay as long as there isn't a 25% price hike, which there is. And then you have small game stores, which can barely scrape by, I'd say, I don't know, 20% to 45% of them can barely scrape by. Maybe more, I don't know. Having a 25% price increase. And then customers who are already shy of paying the increased costs of Magic over the years. Maybe it's a bridge too far to cross for them. I don't know. And maybe, they might want to protest an American company. I don't know. I don't know whether this will affect sales. But the point is that the upfront cost is going to be a lot in the smaller game stores. They may not be able to absorb that upfront cost, and therefore there may be cancellations or something like that. So then, all of them have pre-ordered. I don't really pre-order, and I dip my toes in once in a while, and I don't like the feeling of pre-ordering, and I'm still kind of against it. I have promised things to people that are in my store that how much of what product they want. And I have not made price promises, that kind of thing, right? So, and I haven't had them put down money based on a price promise. But so the tariffs themselves now increase the price, and if people pre-ordered, then now the price is 25% more. And just so you know, the profit margin at stores, whether it's from maybe small stores get a little bit more of a profit margin because they're smaller stores and people are willing to pay more, but large stores are, anywhere from 5 to 20%, but somewhere around 10 to 15% profit margin. So you add 25% to that, and now you're approaching 40%, which is usually what the profit margin for most stores are, except for grocery stores, which are average about 2%. But then you have, large, things in the store that have much higher, like chocolate bars and candy and that kind of stuff is like 80, 120%, whatever. But if you average it out, it's 2% because the food itself is really, really low percentage, and some of it's lost leaders. That's another entire thing. I'm just saying that most stores get to charge 40% because that's usually an accepted amount to charge to keep a store open. But when it comes to game stores, nobody accepts the idea of you having a 40% profit margin, except now with the tariffs. You kind of have to but you're not even going to benefit from the full 40% because 25% of it is going to tariffs, and you're still stuck with the low profit margins that game stores have. So the tariffs are going to be a tight squeeze on small businesses, medium businesses, and large businesses, because like large game stores are just large stores. They're not Walmart. They're not Target, and I'm sure even Target and Walmart would suffer under tariffs as well. And again, I don't want to talk economics, but what happens to the economy when suddenly prices rise that much? We saw that with the rising inflation through 2021 and 2022, and it does or could or will cause problems. And then will that change consumer behavior, and then it becomes more difficult to sell things, and therefore the price is already high and they're less likely to buy, and then you have a bunch of it that you can't sell, and you're stuck with it, and the cost of it is baked in because of the tariffs, so you can't even reduce it that much, because then you're going to be at a loss, and then so are a lot of game stores going to be selling stuff at a loss if things go on too long. A lot of game stores have indicated that they can't afford this, and I'm sure a lot of stores can't afford this. A lot of places take in goods from the United States and they sell it to Canadian consumers, and they could source possibly other things that are Canadian. Hopefully, it's impossible to do so with a collectible card game because there is no Canadian collectible card game. Wizards of the Coast could possibly use Canadian printers, but I know of one indie collectible card game that used the Canadian printer, and by all accounts, people didn't particularly like the quality of that Canadian printer for whatever reasons. I don't know the specifics of it. So a Canadian printer could up their game and get better machinery and that kind of stuff, but that takes time. So to have Wizards have a printer in Canada, I don't know whether is the market is tiny in comparison to the United States. They can do just fine, probably without selling to anywhere but the United States. I mean, they could get by, right? So do they need to service Canada and avoid tariffs by having a Canadian printer? I don't know whether that is in the cards. So these tariffs are going to be tough on your local business, whether it's a game store or any business. So, just think about that when you're buying stuff, and whether, I understand you don't want to pay an extra 25% for something. But then again, is that store going to collapse if everyone, stops buying? I don't know. I am not concerned really that much because, first of all, I have a job. So if the store collapses, which I don't think it's going to, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It just means that I don't have some place to play Magic on Fridays. So hopefully they can figure this out and let them know. Let I don't know. Let the governments know that I need a place to play Magic on Fridays, and it's very important that they solve this problem. Thanks a lot.